Hello folks, this is Chris with Oregon Figs. It's July 15th, 2022. So I'm going to start giving a little tour of my in-grounds in my orchard with the trees that went in this year. I have 6 trees that went in this year, and this is one. It's Texas Peach. It does appear to be struggling a tiny bit with FMV, as you can see on these leaves here. But I'm noticing that some of the newer leaves that are coming out are FMV free. And that's pretty typical of a tree that's been stressed out. When we put them in, and if you put them in at the time I put them in, which I suggest for the Pacific Northwest is the spring. Early spring is fine. Late spring is okay as well. Start getting into summer, it's getting so hot. It's just a really bad time, I think, to put a tree in ground because there's enough stresses on the tree as it is. But you can see right next to these leaves, which have some fig mosaic virus on them, there are a couple figs setting, and there's one over there. So it's not setting the world on fire, but right now it really is all about just getting its roots dug in. So I'm really happy with this. This one I put in just about right, because when I come over here with the hose, I can just have the hose on a full stream, and it just all goes right in because there's such good porosity in the mix. And this is why I make my hole the size that I make it, the shape that I make it, and I put my mix in the way that I do it. Remember, these are growing trees in a place that doesn't generally get rain in July, August, and generally halfway through September. So you're going to have to irrigate. You're not going to be helped by Mother Nature. You're going to have to irrigate. So if you're going to irrigate and you don't have drip set up, which I do not at this point, you're going to have to take a hose and get them wet with a hose. What's nice about my mix and the way that I do this is I can come over with a hose and I can put on this tree, I probably put on 20 gallons of water. It's good for 7 to 10 days. I don't have to mess with it. This one I did a pretty poor job of putting it in. I had it raised up too high, and when you went to water it, the water was running off. So I had to come back in, and I used some Frugal Pro mix, and I raised it up, and I raised up the area around the base, and I put in composted steer manure. I put in Frugal Pro mix, and then I put some pebble bark that I mixed in with my hands a little bit. Now you can come over, you can take the hose, and it'll go right to the root system. So once again, growing trees in ground in Oregon where you have no rain in the month of July, August, and generally most of September. I say no rain, I should really say very little rain. In some case that is no rain. These trees are going to dry out, so if you put them in a little small hole to try to constrict the roots, it's probably the worst thing you can do unless you're there all the time and you want to either have them on drip irrigation or you want to be putting a hose on them all the time. We're not here all the time, so I don't really want to do that. So when I come in and water, I want to water this tree, I want to put 20 gallons of water on it. That's my plan. But this is LSU Tiger, a couple tiny figs, nothing setting the world. These are not even pea size yet, right? So these are really little. I don't even know if these will ripen in time. That's okay, it's a first year tree. I'm not worried about fruit. What I really want is growth. I want them setting a nice deep root system. This one I put in was just a whip, had no scaffolding forming. It's Iranian candy, and this is one that was just plagued with FMV in its early growth stages, and I am so happy to see how it's fighting it. It's fighting the good fight, let's put it that way. I still see some FMV. This leaf right here is a classic example. You'll see some leaves will have this bubbling and change of color. You'll have some muted colors. Here's some more of that bubbling that's going on. But if you look at the top growth, you'll see it's just perfectly green, gorgeous stuff. So it's outgrowing it. And I have a theory that as these trees that are generally riddled with FMV are in the ground, given enough time, developing enough of a root system, they will outgrow it. I won't get figs off of this one this year, and that's okay. Okay, this is Golden Rainbow. One in ground this year. This one I did a good job, and I didn't have to really add much to it other than a little on the backside. So put a little soil there yesterday on the backside. But we're getting a nice fig there. And these are really big figs. So I was wondering if this would actually ripen a crop in ground. And it was a terrible cold spring, and I still see a few that are setting. So that's a good sign for Golden Rainbow. Next one is Rhone de Bordeaux, RDB. This tree has a kind of a funny backstory. I got it, grew up as a nice tree. I got it from Herman, who was kind of a fig guru at the time, back in probably 2018. And my tree grew nicely, and the bucks just destroyed it. So I cut it off, and it started making new growth, and I put it up in the garden, but I put it near some grapes that gave it shade all day long, so it did not like that spot. I was told it will do well in a spot that has less sun, but it needs some sun. So I've kind of bucked the trend here, and I've put this in a place that gets full sun all day long. And I don't see any figs this year, but I'm not worried about figs. I'm worried about, not really worried, I'm concerned. I want good root growth. Okay, for the last tree that went in ground this year, that's over here. And I did a poor job of putting this one in ground, so yesterday I came through and made it where it will take tons of water by adding soil in my mix. So this one is Corky's Honey Delight. This was a cutting that I received from Philip in Santa Barbara, who is one of the most generous men you will ever meet. And one in ground, this is its second leaf. The first leaf, it basically created a straight stem. It's coming up off the ground around, I'd say 3.5 feet or so, and it's forming its scaffolding. And I actually really like this shape for my particular situation with the deer and the bucks rubbing, because eventually this would become wide enough where I could just put a single wrap around the bottom of it, and the deer would stay off of it. But I do see they are little. Don't expect to get these. These are main crop. Not even sure you can see that. It's just so darn tiny. So, but once again, first year tree, not overly concerned with figs this year. I'm more concerned with it rooting in. This is Planera. This is an example of how not to plant a tree in ground in Oregon. So I put it on this side hill, and it washed out a bit, and it exposed the roots of the tree. And the tree was just so stressed. I put it in, it got to be 103 degrees a couple days later. I think it did root damage, and it grew probably 2 inches the whole year of 2021, and it was unlignified, and it had tip death. So I've stressed this tree out through poor techniques. So I've come back in, and I've put in a wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of soil in here as I was doing some excavating, basically on this back side. And notice the same thing going on again this year. So I came in yesterday and added more, did my typical top dress so that you can put the hose on it, and created a little area around. And the tree looks spectacular. Don't think I'm going to get figs this year. I have yet to see a main crop, but look at these beautiful leaves. This is just a glorious tree. I'm really, really happy with it. Not one sign of FMV. I think next year is the year for Planera for me. After I've basically done everything wrong, I think I've compensated by doing a few things right and creating a really nice tree. Okay, we'll go up the row here. This is my favorite tree for in-ground in Oregon. This is Red Lebanese Baca Valley. Incredible growth this year, and really nice figs. I mean, this is why the Mount Etnas are such a great choice for in-ground here in Oregon. All right, look at the size of those. They're just beautiful. July 11th, after a really cold spring and a wet spring. So figs set really late. Just figs setting everywhere. And I see some that are really small and I see some that are really big. And hopefully it'll be a prolonged harvest with this one. This is a real winner for Oregon in ground. And this is Campanieri. Once again, super prolific, setting nice figs. They're really a good size at this point. Go around the tree. I'm seeing quite a few figs. I don't know if they're figs at every node, but quite a few figs, just period, I guess. There's some nice big ones in there. Nice, really nice fig right there, a couple figs. So yeah, all the way around, setting a bountiful harvest, hopefully. More in there. So really happy with this one. FMV wise, I see a tiny bit on this leaf. Other than that, I don't see any. And I didn't see any at all in Red Lebanese Baca Valley, and there's none on Planera. All right, we're gonna jump out of figs for just a second because I gotta show you this. I'm really happy with this. This is my Nikita's gift persimmon, and it was covered with persimmon, and it's only been in the ground 2 years. And I watched a video that Lou Monty put out, and he said basically when a tree is young like this, you really want to take drop the persimmon and let it put its effort into growing the tree and the root system. And I followed his advice, reluctantly I might add, and the results have been fantastic. So now I'm planning for the tree scaffolding. I would like to get it up probably at the 3-foot level. So all of this lower growth is going to come out. And then I don't want anything as a competing leader. So I've actually kind of pinched some of the growth to slow that down and let it put its energy into this. This is the leader that I've determined is going to be my leader. So I'm shaping the tree right now, and I'm just leaving it alone, letting it grow, and awfully glad that there are people like Lou Monty out there that are willing to share their advice and have a lot of experience. Okay, we're gonna go down to Black Zadar. This thing is a beast this year. I don't know what's happening. That's I didn't see these figs develop till really quite a bit late. That's a good sized Breba. It's being a little shy right there. It's got that really cool flat shape that I really like in a fig. So it had 2 Breba early on in the season, and unfortunately they either dropped or didn't develop. Very few Breba really did well in Oregon this year, with the exception of, for me, Desert King and Bifaro Zeus, and I've got a couple Olympians. But other than that, all the Breba pretty much dropped, and it was a function of how old the trees are and just how cold and wet it was. But really nice tree, not a ton of figs on it, but it's setting figs, and it may ripen main crop in ground in Oregon. This is Black Greek Marius. This is another one I had problems with the buck. I actually took the main trunk out and just decided to let these 3 pieces grow up. And super healthy growth, no FMV, not a lot of figs though. I mean, there's a few in there. So I'll get a few figs off it, but it's not setting the world on fire right now. But the growth is pretty impressive. So let's look at top growth. So from here, hard to see, the sun is just beaconing in here today. From here to here, probably about 14 inches. And it's nice, thick, healthy growth. So I'm happy once again with the growth here. Okay, we're gonna ignore that one because that's Corky's and we've already talked about it. Okay, this is one that, if you remember back my earlier video, this is the Lampere Preta. And my worst growing in-ground tree has decided to become a lovely little in-ground tree. I was contemplating taking down at the base, let's see if we can get you to see that. There's a sucker that's coming up, and I'm not sure you can really see it that well. But I was contemplating to cut the main one off and let the sucker take over, but I didn't. And I'm really glad I didn't. I mean, I'm gonna have to accept the fact that this is not gonna be a single stem tree, but it's got a lot of growth this year that could lead to Breba production for next year. Fingers are crossed on that one. Okay, how good's my memory? Okay, this is by Pharaoh Zeus, another one that never really grew that well. And this year, with all that cold weather and all the rain, the most rain we've had in the last 50 years in a spring, this thing has just decided to absolutely take off. I'm really encouraged by this. Now we got to get in there and do a hunt for Breba. There's a nice big Breba. And there's another one down there. So there's two nice Breba there. There's a nice Breba in here. And there's one right in here. We got a plane that's gonna go overhead here in a second. So you can see the difference on the growth where the Breba right there is growing on last year's wood, and the main crop, starting with this one right next to it, growing on this year's wood. Now I'm really surprised, first of all, that I have main crop forming, and secondly, just how well the trees come back. Okay, this shape, this tree has a really pretty shape. This is honey plum. And reluctantly, it's beginning to set figlets. It was late to the game in setting figlets. I don't know if this is going to be a common theme. It dropped its Breba as well. Don't know if that's going to be a common theme. So at this point, I'm just excited, now that I've got it in ground and it's not in a pot, to potentially taste main crop figs. This one is Brown Sugar Crunch. It might be Teramo, unknown, that Big Bill found back in Pennsylvania, but it was found in a different place, and it hasn't been proven that it is Teramo. Right now it's Brown Sugar Crunch, and it's a wonderful tree. Sets figs early, super prolific, growing really well. Tiny skosh of FMV here, just a little tiny bit, and the spider on there. Lots of new growth, and lots of strong new growth though. So it's nice and thick. I love that. You see that kind of growth. So quite a few figs on this tree. And here's my big experiment, my Smith, which was in a 10 gallon. I actually checked the pot size. And this is the one where I have a theory on this tree. And the theory is that this tree likes heat. It doesn't like our cool spring. It doesn't mind the rain. It just doesn't like the cool spring and the cool nighttime temperatures in the 40s. So it's slow to start growing, and it's slow to set figs. I've had this tree several years. I've only had a couple figs off it. One aborted, and the other one I tasted. It was delicious. But I'm thinking the answer for my particular tree here in Oregon might be in ground. Now what I've done is I've allowed too much growth, too many growth points. So I'm gonna have to go through this fall and pick my growth points that I want to keep. And honestly, if this fig doesn't fruit for me next year, it may be in the compost pile. No matter, I mean, it's a beautiful tree, and I hate to say it, I'm reluctant to say it, but I'm not going to grow a tree that wants more heat than we have, and it won't fruit for me. This is Long Diute. It's got those really pretty long figs on it. And this is one that my buddy Derek in Springfield has fruited from an in-ground tree. So this is potentially a good choice. I think it had Breba, but I'm not 100% sure. And once again, it dropped, like most of my figs that aren't really totally established, it dropped the Breba. Okay. Now we're going down to Sangue Dolce. So this tree I put in ground right before that 103-degree heat last year, and it grew about 2 inches, an inch maybe. And I don't know if it was a combination of that heat that made it grow so slowly, or the fact that I think the foals were getting down and getting at the roots. So I've done my thing where I go in and do the composted steer manure, and it's all of a sudden gone from like 1 or 2 inches of growth in a year to right from here I look at about 14 inches of growth, and there's some figs in there. So this is the year I think Sangue Dolce comes around. I see quite a few figs on it. Super encouraging. Okay, this might be the star of the show. This is my Desert King. It's been growing this year a lot. And it's got quite a few really nice Breba. I think there's around 40 or 50 on it. They're all good size. None of them have started drooping yet. It's actually even putting on. Here's that example of Breba versus main crop. The big ones are on last year's wood. That's the Breba. And the little ones, which will not ripen here consistently, the main crop. This is a San Pedro, so it typically needs the main crop to ripen with the wasp. Now, there's the reports of the occasional main crop ripening without the wasp, but it's nothing you can depend on. A lot of figs on it, so it's done well. It's kind of turned the corner. The Olympian, I was being really mean towards this fig on my last video. It's doing just fine. It's really come around. And I shouldn't be so mean towards figs and so impatient. Those are two really nice Breba. Okay, so we're starting to get our dry weather, so we've done a cut on the field, and hopefully that's the last cut, and it will just actually, because we don't irrigate, it'll start burning, which is no big deal. I'm gonna walk you down here, just show you a couple things that are down the lower property. Property line's real close here. This is an Alberta spruce. We've named her Alice. This is an eastern redbud. Beautiful, beautiful color in the spring. Now I'm going to take you down here to a tree that I bought from Just Fruits and Exotics. And it came in from Florida, and I put it in ground, and it just sat there doing nothing. And I'm thinking, oh, it just doesn't like this cold weather. I thought I'd lost it. But as it turns out, I didn't lose it. This is a Proc, an American persimmon. So I'm just letting it grow right now, and then I'll determine which of these growths will become the central leader. But this year I'm just leaving it alone, letting it grow. Seems to be doing well. Oh, I was kind of hoping the miniature horses were out. I think they're up behind the barn up there. They are so cute. It's like a cross between a horse and a dog. Absolutely love them. Okay, this is a d'Anjou pear. Hasn't done much. I'll be honest with you, I really think to be successful with pear in Oregon, I think you need a good spray regimen. So I need to be a little more consistent on spray. There's that plane again. Get some planes that they come up here and they just kind of fly over the lake. This is an existing apple that was here, and it's good for like apple butter and applesauce. My wife is very into that. This is a Fuji that I put in. It had some issues this year. I had to take a big scaffold off it that was really diseased. I'm glad I took it off though, and I put it in the burn pile immediately. So our cold weather on this particular tree has led to very few apples. There's a couple up there. There's a bunch in there. There's some in there. I don't spray this tree, and this tree gets a lot of spots so on the apples. So eventually I'll probably have to do some sort of spray. I think this year was the first year I actually did a dormant spray on it. Horticultural oil. All right, we're heading back up towards the garden. That's pretty much it for the figs. I'll probably do something about the actual garden as well in a bit. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed visiting Oregon for a little while.